here's another PSA from the great outdoors. Persons have contacted me, it's summer, so people are trying to travel. Persons have contacted me to ask if they can get an emergency passport to travel because they just realized their passport is expired. Some realize after they book the ticket, some realize at the airport. I had a young lady recently who had actually gone to the airport and they told her the passport is expired. Check your passport before you book a ticket. That's the first thing you have to do. You cannot book a ticket without looking at your passport. Sometimes I ask a person, when does your passport expire? They're looking at the passport and they still can't find the expiry date. But this video is about emergency travel certificate, and I'll get into that right after this. The emergency travel certificate. Now, people say to me, I want an emergency passport. One, if you live outside of Jamaica, there are no emergency passports. There's an emergency certificate, which is, like a piece of paper that says you may board a flight to Jamaica. And when you get to Jamaica, you apply for a passport there. That will get you on the flight. This document is good for 1 day and one specific flight. If you miss that flight, the certificate is no good. Now, where do you get this document? You can apply for an emergency certificate from the Jamaican consulate or embassy responsible for your state or your city, depending on which country you live in. It's pretty much the same office. You have to get it through the consulate. There are 2 consulates in the United States and 1 embassy. Regardless of whether or not there are honorary consuls in different places like Atlanta, maybe in Texas, maybe in Los Angeles. These are not consulates, these are honorary consuls. The document that you are requesting has to be issued by the official consulate general responsible for your state. Now, persons who have lost passport situation, it is even more tedious for them, because when you are applying for an emergency certificate after your passport has been lost, you require everything that is required for a lost passport. You need to have a passport application form and an emergency certificate application form, and these are 2 different forms. You have to have a police report, you have to have your lost report form, which is another form, and you have to have a statement. None of these are the police report. So let me say the forms again. Passport application form, emergency certificate application form, lost report form, and a statement. On top of that, you must have a police report, and you need to have a flight itinerary. And the cincher, you must have proof of the emergency. So in many cases, the emergency is a funeral, so you get a copy of the death certificate or the burial order. But you have to have this document when you are presenting the application to your consulate. They will not issue an emergency certificate if you do not have proof of the emergency. And if you go to any of the consulate's website, they generally have in bracket, when they say emergency, it normally says a funeral or an illness. So as I mentioned in a previous video, having a graduation to attend or having a wedding to attend might not constitute an emergency in the eyes of the consulate. It would not warrant an emergency certificate. Now, how long does it take? An emergency certificate, depending on which consulate you go through, can take a week to 3 weeks. If you drop it off, you can pick it up maybe the next day. In Miami, it takes 24 hours. But you have to be able to get to Miami. I had a client recently who was in Tallahassee. He said he was only a few hours away, so he would drive there. So if you're able to drive there, you can drop it off. But say you live in Washington State, your consulate is New York. You'd have to mail it in. It's going to take time to get there, so you factor in the mailing time. And it's going to take time to go through the system for them to check the application that you have everything, process it, and that's going to take a few days, could take a week, and then they're going to mail it back to you, and that's also going to take time. So factor in about 3 weeks for the emergency certificate by mail. How much does it cost? The certificate itself costs about $80, but when you are going to mail it to them and them to mail it back to you, I think you have to pay another $20 for New York. I think Miami maybe another $30, so Miami would be like $110, New York would be like $100, and this is just the emergency certificate. If you are granted an emergency certificate, to go to Jamaica, and it's usually only granted for Jamaica, you have to get a passport while you're in Jamaica. So when you're booking the ticket for the flight, you have to factor the time it will take you to submit your application to the passport office and then pick up your new passport. They have a next day service, but from my understanding, you have to get there before 6 o'clock or something like that to be able to get in. The same day, and they do have a next day. You also have to factor in that when you are applying for a passport in Jamaica, you cannot have the document signed by a notary public in your state. It has to be certified by a JP in Jamaica. The same for your photographs. You have to get everything certified in Jamaica. So before you go, make arrangements with a family member to take you to a JP. Because in Jamaica, I found it out the hard way many years ago. You have to know somebody who knows somebody to be recommended to the JP, because the person is supposed to know you. So you have to get that certified in Jamaica. If the passport is lost, you have to have all the documents and a valid ID. But if you're traveling to Jamaica, you likely have a green card already. So you have to have all the documents, including your original birth certificate, to take to Jamaica with you. And if you are married, the original marriage certificate. If you're divorced and you want to change your name at the same time, you have to bring the divorce decree. So you have to have all of the documents, and they have to be originals, and you have to get them certified in Jamaica. Fill the application form overseas. By all means, it's the same application form, but when you get to Jamaica, you have to get them certified and submitted there. Remember that something might always go wrong. What is the law? Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. Always factor in time for the possibility that something can go wrong. Now, if you have an application that is already being processed and it's time for you to travel and you did not get the passport back yet, like my client recently, then you may submit the document for the emergency certificate. You do not have to submit everything again, because you already have an application. You've already submitted, ID and all of that stuff, but you do have to submit the application form again. The application form for the certificate is the same as the passport form. And like I mentioned before, you must have the emergency certificate application form as well. So the passport form you filled out, hopefully did on the computer, because then you can print it out. If you have not made copies of it, then you would have to refill the application form manually. If you have an application that is already being processed by one of the consulates, the fee to get the certificate does not change. That does not affect the fee. You still have to pay the full fee. The only difference is that you do not have to resubmit all of the same documents. Generally, for an emergency certificate, when the passport is just expired and not lost, is photographs, application form for a passport, application form for an emergency certificate. Now, I say passport, but it doesn't mean you're applying for a passport. It means that it's the application form that must be filled to give them all the relevant information on you: name, date of birth, emergency contact persons, address, stuff like that. The emergency certificate application form mostly asks about the flight you're going on, the flight date, the flight time, the airline, stuff like that, and the reason for your trip. But the application form for the passport is the same form you fill out for the emergency certificate, and that one is asking you all the regular details. So you must have that, even if you have an expired passport, or if you have already submitted an application for a passport and did not get it back in time. Like I said, it does not affect the processing. Whether you have an application or not does not affect the processing time, nor does it affect the price. And factor all of this in when you're booking your ticket. This is a little tricky, because you have to factor in how long your document will take to reach the consulate, how long it will take them to open it, how long it will take them to mail the document back to you, and how long it will take for you to get it delivered by, they generally use FedEx. So you have to factor this in when you're booking the ticket. That's the part I don't like, because it's only good for that one flight, as I indicated. If you miss that flight, if the flight gets cancelled, you would have to get the certificate altered. Well, it is their fault the flight got cancelled. Hopefully they'd be a little lenient. But if you miss the flight for whatever reason, they might not be so lenient. You'd have to get the certificate amended. This is a lot of trouble. It's a lot easier to try to keep a valid passport. How do you do that? Check your passport, keep in the back of your mind when it expired, and get it renewed on time. The government allows you to renew up to a year before your passport is expired, so you do not have to wait to the exact expiry date. Anyway, if you have any questions that I have not answered in this video, please leave them down in the comments. Share this video with someone who might have an expired passport, who probably has an emergency right now and have no idea what to do. And as usual, I am Gail of 876 Documents. Please hit the subscription button wherever you see it. It says SUBSCRIBE, subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 followers. That is my current YouTube goal. All right, thanks for following 876 Documents, and I thank you for watching.